Do I look like I know what I'm talking about? Should I scoot a little bit more?
Sure. Whatever.
Sweet. Ready to do this?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Who's editing this? Are you editing this?
Probably.
Okay, cool.
Am I? Okay. All right. Day 2 of Reykjavik CrossFit Championship. We're here in Reykjavik, Iceland. We just watched another 4 scored events today.
4 scored events.
We're going to give you a little bit of a wrap up. Let's talk about some of the highlights that we've seen from the athletes that we think are really in strong contention here for not just the podium spot, but also the coveted games invite. Armen, why don't you kick it off?
Well, there's an athlete I've never heard of in the women's side in first place right now. An athlete that didn't participate in the Open this year.
Yeah.
An athlete that really had middle of the road performances in the Open previously. And an athlete that has kind of solidified a solid lead in this event this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, lead in second place, I wouldn't even say she's had middle of the road Open performances. Her best worldwide finish is 11,057, I think. So it's like,
it's good for me.
Yeah, so it's not like she was even in contention for regionals.
To be clear, we're talking about Hannah Carlson.
Yes, Hannah Carlson. Yeah, and with if you're looking for her on the leaderboard, Hannah with no H on the backside. So previously in Sweden, now in an island off the coast of Spain. But she didn't do the Open this year, so we didn't really have a litmus test for her coming into the season. And this is kind of the second time in 2 weeks this has happened, where Erin van der Esch, I guess, did it in Italy last year, where maybe an athlete is just kind of putting all their eggs in the sanctionals basket, because really there's no benefit to her doing the Open at this point if she's not really planning on trying to qualify through the Open, and it's not necessarily a qualifier for her for some of these other events. So it's interesting though that she just kind of come out of the woodwork like that, but especially with not very much of a regionals history. Only 3 years in the Open prior to this year. So right
now she is got 473 points. She's only 10 points out of first place, but she's definitely leading the pack from athletes who have not received either an invite through sanctionals or a qualification spot. I think the next closest athlete is Tori Dyson. 409 points. So that is roughly 60 something points away, which is not insurmountable, but that is going to be really tough to make up with how many scored events do we have tomorrow?
They got 4 listed for tomorrow.
Okay, so 4 scored events. Tori Dyson today probably would have finished in a much better position.
Sure, she was in contention.
Right. Talk about that. She kind of had a bit of a mess up today that probably put her out of.
Yeah, so during that strongman event, during the event, not the strongman event, well, it had a yoke in it, that's why I think it's strongman event. During the rope climb, box jump over a yoke carry event, she was in the lead. She was doing exceptionally well, and then she ate 2 really nasty no reps back to back, and it just crushed her in that event. And it really goes to show, there are events. Workouts where you can take a no rep, like a box jump, makes no difference.
Yeah.
You take a no rep in a legless rope climb, and you are plummeting down the leaderboard. Yeah. And where we saw, Tori Dyson have really sort of just completely tank this event just based off of those two no reps, very costly. We saw the kind of opposite happen, at least during the first 3 events, with Haley Adams, who came in. She has a spot through the Open. She's been really exceptionally well in the Open this year, and was sort of not happy with how she had done last night in the snatch. And she came back today and really showed that she belongs to compete on a big stage.
Yeah, and
like
currently
this.
our overall winner. Our overall leader.
Yeah.
By 10 points, and this would be a huge step up, I think, for her as an 18-year-old athlete. She's going to be qualifying. She's qualified for her first CrossFit Games, coming out of the team division, dominating the team division in the last CrossFit Games. And then she competed, probably best performance was 7th place at Strength and Depth earlier this year, with some really heavy hitters above her. To come in here and possibly win, I think, you have a lot of experience in looking at athletes transitioning from the teams to individual side. Does that indicate that she's ready to really step up and compete against the fittest females in the world?
Right now, yes, but there isn't a ton of precedent for athletes to do that. So she would be the first, former teen champ to make the leap into the individuals. course, you've seen other athletes like Nick Palladino not be able to make the jump
and
quite
Joe
yet.
DeChico too.
Yeah, George Sterner will actually be joining her as a podium athlete from the teenage competition this year. DeChico unfortunately had to retire from CrossFit competition due to injury, so never quite really saw the full extent of what he was capable of. But I mean, Haley had the benefit of being able to compete at a higher level than her age would necessarily dictate
Right,
early
two-time
on.
regional athlete.
Yeah, before she even got to the individual competition by age. So I think she had a little bit more experience in that regard. Plus, she obviously moving to spend time at Mayhem this year, surrounding yourself in an environment where there are athletes that are much wiser beyond your years, has benefited her. And we saw it today in the handstand walk event, where she wasn't necessarily the first person, you know, that you would have jumped out to win an event like this. She has been practicing. She said in an interview earlier that she'd been practicing handstand walks twice a week, like prescribed by Rich, specifically for events like this where you have to be able to handstand walk when you're tired.
Right.
And that was kind of the difference for her, to be able to kind of, you know, put together what was her best event finish of the weekend so far. And now, you know, that's what moved her up ahead of Carlson in that particular event where she maybe struggled a little bit.
And
Yeah.
her performance, by the way, speaks to an interesting sort of look at the development of athletes over time, right? The holes in her game, the places where she's lacking, are almost entirely based on hours of input. And that's just strength. Like, if she's stronger, imagine what she's going to be able to do. But she's built a world-class capacity, a world-class skill set, and she's able to put it on the floor during competition.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
You know, and to think that the really one thing that she's lacking isn't really anything other than a physical maturity that
She's
comes
time
with
under the bar.
time under a bar.
Just more time building up her strength. So let's transition to the guys a little bit. So there are a lot more men who have already qualified or been invited through a sanctioned event. I think it's now, after things have shaken out over the last couple of days, 7 on the men's side have already received either a qualification for the Open or an invite through a sanctioned event. We have in the top position Oscarson, and Tommy, I think you have a good bent on his history here and why this might be a bit of a significant sort of event if he ends up getting the qualification or the invite from Reykjavik.
Yeah, I wouldn't say ironically enough, competing in the same location that ultimately got him the ban is what's going to get him a spot to the game. So 2016 Icelandic National Championships, he won, refused the drug test, received a 2-year ban in Iceland from competing at events here. CrossFit Inc. followed that up with a 1-year provisional ban, and then followed that up to match any sanctions handed out as well. So he would actually be the first athlete to receive a drug testing sanction to come back and qualify for the CrossFit Games. And granted, he refused the test, but you know that's a big difference now, especially coming back and being banned in your home country, to now step up and theoretically be the top guy behind another fellow countryman in Bjorkman, who's highly revered here, to earn your way back to the CrossFit Games. You know, maybe under a little bit of controversy, but performing nonetheless.
Yeah. So who do we have? We've got Oscar. So right now the top athletes we got on the list: BKG, Oscarson. BKG's really far ahead. He's got 534 points. To second place is 484 points. Then in third, we've got a tie between Roman Krennikov and Lucas Esslinger. Then we got Gervais, Morad, Horvath, and Colty.
Well, the changes on the men's side are so frequent on the leaderboard, the open leaderboard.
Right.
It's so frequent, so unexpected. All it's going to take is one extra person to take a team invitation, and suddenly Heinrich takes an open spot, and it opens up yet again, and it starts rolling down even further the backfill down this leaderboard. And so I think it's really interesting that it's not just in flux and then it's set and now we have to deal with the cards we're dealt, but it's still continually in flux, and we won't know until at least mid next week. So at least until after the event is over, to kind of like figure out whether it's actually going to be Henrik or if it's going to be somebody else.
Well, and then obviously we have, you know, Brazil coming up and Rogue coming up. So some of these athletes that are on the floor here, a couple of them are going to be going to Brazil. I don't think any of them are going to Rogue on the men's or the women's side, so maybe not too much of a significance there. But then we've got Lowlands in France, and so probably right around Lowlands at the end of May that we'll actually get a pretty good understanding of like, okay, this is probably what the open qualifiers really do look like.
And by then, there's only one sanctioned
There's only one
left in
sanctioned
France.
event at that point left, which is France, which is at the end of June. So who is? Do we have anybody that's really in a good, solid position to take Oscarson on, given the big point differential?
Yeah, not really. I just don't think there's enough points up for grabs in terms of disparity between the athletes for someone.
He's not finishing far outside of the top 5, top 7 in these events.
He has been very consistent.
He's extremely consistent so far.
Kind of taking a page out of BKG's book, who's the one guy ahead of him, kind of following up in that footstep, if you will. But it's just tough because the two guys right behind him on the leaderboard are also already have spots.
Right.
So you're looking at someone like Josh Gervais or Will Morad at 6th to potentially try and make that jump. And I just don't
But
think...
even Gervais is 60 points back. That is enough. You would have to come in and dominate on day 3.
Yeah.
Right, to make up that amount of points.
And he'd have to
exactly.
get crushed by every event.
And it doesn't sound like much, but the fact that, guys like Esslinger and like Paulson and guys that you would hope would be able to push and like drive someone down, they don't have the same edge. They might have that edge in a particular workout, but over the course of the weekend, talking with all these athletes, they're like, yeah, I'm out here to have a good time and try a few things here, maybe push for a particular event win, but the overall standings isn't as important to me.
Right, they already have qualifications.
So that hurts someone like who's actually really trying to push, like Gervais or Morad, like, hey, I'm going to give my best effort in an event. Then I need a bunch of these games athletes to kind of sneak in between us.
Yeah,
but if they're not giving,
distance.
if they're not giving full effort on a workout, then I can't necessarily count on that, and that's probably going to be too big of a margin to overcome.
Right. One other hot topic that we've seen today is like the daughters event, which I think was like kind of a highlight, not only for the Icelandic CrossFit community because of how important those two athletes are to this community and to this country, but I think just like to the CrossFit community in general. I know we were all down here on the floor. Everybody basically just crowded around these two athletes. Like, how cool was that to be here experiencing that in person and see that like firsthand?
Well, I think first off, they played a video that it's already been posted. That is
give you chills.
Fantastic. I mean, I've had the benefit of seeing a ton of hype videos and CrossFit from time to time, and that one made me want to step out on the floor and like do the workout myself. But from a broader perspective, like, there's Annie in particular, and then Katrin now, and more recently, but like those are the reason that the women's competition became the centerpiece of the CrossFit Games. Whereas you on the men's side, you had someone that's been dominated by two figures in particular that for so long. In a sport that pushed equality from the get-go in terms of prize money and things like that. Annie especially in creating this new age of athletes and Katrin kind of picking up the mantle and having them come to the gym and this the same kind of small island is. You could almost say there hasn't been a more important pairing of athletes to the sport than those two. And 4
championships between the both of them, but they've stood on the podium countless other times beyond that and continue to, like, Annie's a great testament to that. Like, you thought perhaps a couple of years ago she was sort of on the decline as an athlete, and then all of a sudden she winds up on the podium again with a 3rd place finish 2 years ago, and then followed that up with the top 5 finish again, and you're like, wow. Look at that athlete whose longevity in this sport is phenomenal. And I think it was such a special event to see them here and watch that happen and unfold in real time. I also think, though, from a bit of a spectator standpoint, we're seeing in sanctions them incorporating newer events and different kinds of things than just trying to recreate CrossFit Games moments out here with the competitors, but bring like real life, Michael Jordans and LeBron Jameses on the floor like those two ladies are, give them an opportunity to show off a little bit, but also a cool fan experience. Did you find that, like, as a spectator, like a big draw?
Absolutely. Right? I think one of the most interesting things about the Katrin and Annie thing to me is that it solves what many probably would have considered an unsolvable problem. It's the first week of May, and in 2 weeks is the Rogue Invitational, and they're competing there, and they're basically contractually obligated to compete there. So competing here is absolutely a no-go. And so, how do you resolve that? Two icons of the sport in their home city, trying to sort of set the tone for
how
what
do you
the
promote
community,
this event without being there on the floor and doing
I think they bridged that gap beautifully. I think having them come out, showcase an event that's sort of inspired by them and meant to inspire others, and allowing them to sort of revel in the atmosphere. It's good for the spectators, it's good for the fans, it's good for them because you get to Katrin gets to show off her book, people get to get signings and pictures with them, they get to do meet and greets, and suddenly the value of being here as a spectator, the value of experiencing something like that is exponentially greater, and no one loses. And I think the stroke of genius that it took to bring that together is really, to me, what's fascinating about it.
Yeah, it was a really smart play. I mean, like, what's going to fill seats, what's going to bring eyeballs to your media online, like those are moments that just are special, and you're not going to be able to have a Katrin and Annie or a Matt Frazier or a Rich Froning at every single event. That's just not going to happen, right? Because these athletes can't physically put themselves through 8 to 10 hard events, heavy events on a competition floor, but they can come out here and they can do something that's really cool and really fun, and this is just one of the 3 workouts that they're going to do today. But it's not under super heavy load.
And that's important because it still has relevance to the competition.
Absolutely.
Too. You've woven it into the fabric of the competition, and then you've also created a rooting interest because we just saw these icons do it. Now let's see what these athletes are going to compare. And even if someone knocks down a time, that's something that's just as impressive, and it's a win-win for your competition.
Totally. And for those who are, weren't watching in real time, what basically happened was they introduced the next workout that competitors were going to be doing by having Annie and Katrin do this workout head to head. It was a special workout for those 2 ladies, but it was also, like Tommy was talking about, a cool way of integrating, this sort of fan spectator experience into the competition, and they brought all the athletes, the individual athletes, out on the floor and had them watch it, and then really they were demonstrating it in real time, also kind of setting a little bit of a time to beat. And I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm sure that Annie and Katrin beat a handful of other competitors.
Probably like the bottom 2 or 3. Maybe.
Right. Not, maybe 5. Who knows? Anything else that's kind of notable about today that you think really stood out?
I mean, from a broadcast perspective, it'd be really difficult to convey this, but the efficiency and the timing of the event is pretty off the wall. I mean, we're dealing with relatively small fields of play, only 24 or so in each division, but you put that many people through 4 scored events. Over the course of the day, including requiring equipment changes, including the final event of the day not even being known by the judges and the volunteers until we as spectators found out. So I think there is something definitely to be said about the
execution,
the actual logistical execution of an event like this.
And I think we also need to give a good bit of a shout out to the DJ who has been playing.
He's been crushing it.
He's like a solid 9 out of 10 in song selection right now.
Crushing it.
And
every genre, every mood, he matches it perfectly. He has been crushing.
A master of the musical arts. Okay, so anyways, Tommy Marquez, Armen Hammer, Justin Lofranco, coming to you live from Reykjavik CrossFit or Reykjavik CrossFit Championship, and we'll see you tomorrow.